You have a slide full of text like this, and you want to turn it into something that is more visual. Is that you can decide what are the most important elements and decide how to show that graphically. So for this example, what I thought would work really well is having a step-by-step flowchart that you would follow along with. But the thing is that I don't want to show all of this at once because this could be very overwhelming for my viewers. So I would still want to add in some animation so that I'm having each element come up at a time as I'm talking about it. So to add in animations, I want to decide what I want to appear. Whatever I want to appear on that first slide, I'm just going to keep it without an animation. So if I decide all I want to have is the title here, then I would click on this first rectangle and I'm going to decide what type of animation makes the most sense. Now with the animations, it's really easy to get a bit carried away with them and start to have these animations that are really more about bringing in the animation for the animation's sake as opposed to the element that is inside this rectangle. So I want to make sure that the animations I'm using are helping bring attention to the object as opposed to distracting the audience and bringing attention to the animation. So things like these are not really working very well. So I recommend when you're first starting out, really stick to just appear where it just appears on the screen, or fade. There are reasons to bring in other ones. For example, these lines, I'm going to use the wipe one so that I can have them showing going left to right by having something like that. But for these, I'm just going to have the fade appear and then I'm going to have this line wipe in. Now I've already added these in so you don't have to see me do all of the animations at once because it does take a while, but I will show you how to reorganize these. So this is going to automatically come in with an on click, which I don't necessarily want to do because if I want to click for every single animation, then I'm clicking for this one and then this arrow and then this one and then this arrow and then this yes and so on and so forth. So I want to have them come in as groups. So I want to click and have this appear, but then I want this arrow to appear before this one appears. And I want this one and this one to be a group. So you want to think through kind of like how you're going to talk about it. So I'm going to have this appear as a click, and you can see here there's a little click icon. I can adjust it here, I can change the duration, I can also delay it. And since I already have these in here, I can just click and drag this to move it up to the top because I want this to be the first animation that appears. And then I'm going to have this come in as a wipe that you've already seen, and then I'm going to have this just appear afterwards. So to make this appear in that same grouping, I'm going to have click the appear transition animation, and then I'm going to come over here to on click, change it to after previous because I want it to appear after this one comes in. I could also delay it if I want to a certain period of time so that you can have a little bit of a break between animation 1 and animation 2. And I can also change the duration over here if I'd like to. And then I'm just going to highlight both of these by shift clicking them and drag them up to the top. So I now have, you can see the order 1, 2, 3. All of these are 3s and then 4. And then I've decided how to kind of have these come through. Now with these, I want to make sure that the order is right. So I can want to make sure that the numbers are all lined up. And I also want to make sure that it makes sense. So this 5 over here is separate than 6, which means I'm clicking 5 and then I'm clicking 6, which I probably don't want to do. I want to have these aligned like this one. So for that one, if I realize that I've made a mistake, I can just come back up here. Once I have that selected, I either select the object or I can select the animation. And then I can come over here to change it to after previous or with previous if you wanted it to appear at the exact same time. You can see here now the numbers have all shuffled. Now, because this continues after the slide, so I have slide 1 and then I'm going to have slide 2, and I want them to look like they are a continuous flow chart. So what I'm going to do is, this is not an animation, but this is actually a transition. I'm going to use this push transition. And what happens is if I go left to right, it's going to make it appear that this continues. And it's not really showing it because the animations are there, but I'll show you in slideshow mode what that looks like. So I would just have how to use graphic design in your slide deck. And then I would have the first one come in. I would talk about how you finish your slides. And then I would have that wipe with this next one come in, and I would have the first question. So do you have information on the slide that you're planning on reading? And then I can decide how I want to have this next appear because I have the yes and the no. So I would then decide, do I want to have just yes appear and then just no? I decide I want them to appear simultaneously because I want to talk about how you want to think through what makes the most sense for this. So if you're thinking about reading your slides, when does that make sense and when does it not make sense? And then I would have the yes appear. I would talk about how you can move your text on the slide to your notes tab. And then after you do that, then we want to move on to what's the most important. So, and then I have, we're going to talk about the title. You want to make sure that's big, bold, and colorful so that brings your attention there if that's the most important. If the most important is your information, then you want to make sure that it stands out and that it's not competing with other information. And if you, and here I can see I made a mistake, so this is why it's really helpful to go through it. So I want all of it to not be a click, that was a click, and I want this to also appear. So refine your information or spread it out onto different slides. All of it, you can't have all of it be important, the audience is going to get lost. So you want to make that into one idea at a time on each slide, or you're having animations like this. So then this is how that transition comes in. So I would have I would talk about how this is all your hierarchy here. So I'm showcasing that background, and then I'm going to have the arrow come in, and I want to transition then to this next idea. Now, if this is going too fast, I can slow it down. I can also decide how I want that speed to go if I decide that it's not exactly what I want. And then I would continue going through with each of my questions, and you can see that that didn't really line up properly, so I'd want to go back and adjust the timing on that and having each of these come in. And this is really important to just go through and check everything to make sure it's all applying when you want it to. This one is interesting because I was deciding how to make a yes and no, because if I had a yes and a no, for example, here, yes and no coming out the same way I did it over here, then I would end up having these two lines, but for every single one. So I'd have a line here and a line here and a line here and a line here, and pretty soon it would start to be spaghetti soup because I would want all my yeses to be up here and all my nos over here, but the lines would start interacting with each other. So I decided instead of doing that, because that just seemed really confusing, I would instead have my no come up first with the information, and then I would change it to be yes. Now, what I didn't do is I didn't have that fade out. So I'm going to show you how you can make that happen because that's not what we want it to look like. So go back to my slide deck here. What I have is I have all the greens are coming in and all the reds are leaving. And you can see there's no reds. Now, what I want to happen is that the no and this box disappear when my yes boxes come in. So I'm going to come up to animation, and I can't just come over here and choose an exit because it's going to actually replace my entrance animation. So instead, what I want to do is come over here to add animation, and then I'm just going to have a fade out animation. So then what happens is the yes is left behind. And then I can come over here, I was saying like this line, for example, didn't properly line up with the top line. So here you can see that there's a duration here, and I have it at 75.75 seconds. So I probably need to decrease that timing, or I'd need to add a delay here. And then I could either play it back in slideshow mode, or I could do a preview and kind of see what that looks like. You can see it lines up better. It still needs a little bit of work. And then over here was where I had that mistake with the spacing. So I could click on that and realize, okay, well, I need to figure out how to adjust that slightly. So hopefully that helps with your animations. You can use animations and transitions together simultaneously like we had with this transition here. And you can always change the duration if I felt like that was too fast over in this panel. So hopefully that helps with your next set of slides. And just remember to, as much as possible, take each idea, show it one at a time, and that'll make your presentation significantly easier for your audience to follow along.